Hi, I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me. Well, you didn't. I'm still here. And you might be wondering, who are you? Maybe you've never seen a video of mine before. Well, welcome to the channel. My name is Carl. I've been gone for about a year. I've been a little busy, cooking up some things and mainly focusing on my own life. But I've been gripped by a sudden craving to come back to YouTube and do the one thing that I'm afraid only I could ever do, and tell all of you my complete understanding of the Dream SMP timeline and the story as it is, and that's what I'm here to do today. If you just clicked on this video from your recommend or something and maybe you don't know what the Dream SMP is, allow me to tell you. I'm sure you've heard of it in passing at least because it was a huge thing during 2020 and 2021, but if you somehow managed to avoid all of that and you've been living under a rock for the past 5 years, let me tell you. The Dream SMP is a Minecraft roleplay server that took place over 2020 to late 2022, and it was mainly focused around these folks. Some of them, there's some other ones, I haven't included them on this board, but they were important as well. And it focused mainly on this kid, Tommy, who we'll be talking about a lot. I'll be talking about a lot. Dream SMP had multiple different concurrent storylines. A lot of people have seen different ones that I haven't seen, but today I'm mainly going to be covering Tommy's storyline, and also Wilbur will be in it a lot, and maybe a little bit of Quackity, just mainly the ones that I watched. So that brings me to my crux of this video, which is that this is my retelling of the story as I remember it. So again, it's been about 2 years. I stopped watching around the middle of 2021. I found something else to do with my time, I suppose. And as such, I don't know all of the lore. I will cover up to Wilbur's revival in detail, but beyond that, I don't know much about the end, though I will do my best to cover it. And again, since this is my retelling, a lot of this is going to be kind of biased. I really watched Tommy's perspective and a little bit of Wilbur when I got the chance, but for the most part, it's going to be about Tommy, and I won't be able to cover all of the storylines. So if that's what you're here for, sorry, maybe another video. But as it's my retelling, this will have a lot of kind of fanon stuff, so not all of it is completely canon, although the lines do blur a little when it comes to what is canon and what isn't in the Dream SMP, but we'll get to that later on. But if you're here for a strict, unbiased, complete telling of all of the Dream SMP, I can't deliver that to you, and that video would be probably 20 hours long. But if you're still on board for what I have to tell you, welcome, and I can't wait to tell you. Before we get into it, I do have some disclaimers though, as is very important whenever you're making any content about the Dream SMP. So first of all, I just want to say all of the Dream SMP lore is fiction, and the characters do happen to share names with the people who play them, who are real people and real Twitch streamers, and I do not condone any sort of harassment or anything directed their way because of actions of their characters. And if you're thinking, why would anyone do that? This was a big problem, especially during 2020, which I don't want to get into that now. But this is completely fiction. All of it is fiction. And I will do my best to differentiate when I maybe have to talk about the actual Twitch streamers. I'll probably say like the real guy or something like that. And you might also hear me say C Tommy or C Wilbur or C any character. That's an abbreviation that was very popular when talking about the Dream SMP, which is C exclamation point and then the character's name just stands for character, that character, so it's not the Twitch streamer. So if you hear me say that, that's what that is. I also want to say that this video is in no way an endorsement, a wholehearted endorsement or a partial endorsement of any of the actions of any of the people who play any of these characters. This is my retelling of a story that meant a lot to me, and it has nothing to do with the streamers. I haven't watched some of them in a very long time, so if there's controversy I'm not aware of, trust me, this isn't an endorsement, and please don't take it as one. Finally, I want to include that the Dream SMP story has a lot of trigger warnings to look out for. So the main ones are if you're sensitive to depictions of abuse, violence, murder, manipulation, gaslighting, some mentions of suicide. If any of that is not cool to you, I would recommend clicking off this video now. In the other parts of the Dream SMP storyline, there's a lot more, and this thing gets a little dark for a Minecraft roleplay server. So if you're not into any of that, I recommend leaving. I'll see you in another video, but yeah, I'll be covering a lot of kind of heavy stuff. So with all of that said, without any further ado, this is a video I've been wanting to make for some time, and this is my complete retelling of the storyline of the Dream SMP. Please enjoy. So, I have a stick as my pointer for Tommy in it. He loves his sticks, so I'm honoring him. But anyways, the Dream SMP began in April of 2020. It was started by Dream, obviously it's called Dream SMP, and then also George was there, Sapnap, tons, some other folks. They're not that relevant right now. We'll get to them later. But really, the Dream SMP did not start with a vision like, oh, let's make a roleplay server. No. It's an SMP, all right? Survival, multiplayer. It was just meant to be a normal Minecraft server for them to play on for quarantine because everyone was bored. Let's play Minecraft. That was basically the ethos behind it. But a little bit, that started to change when Tommy in it joins the server. So Tommy, the real guy, joined the server on July 4th, 2020. So a lot of people say his character, his birthday is July 4th, which will be relevant later, but keep that somewhere in the back of your mind. But anyways, he joined the server on July 4th, 2020, and immediately starts to cause problems because Tommy, both the character and the real guy, are pretty rambunctious. He likes to start things, he likes to start fights, he likes to get into scuffles. So immediately the first conflict that starts and the first inkling of actual lore is the disc conflict. So Tommy has these discs that he finds, music discs. The discs are Cat and Mellow High, two of the best Minecraft discs, in my opinion. If you need some background music for this video, definitely put them on in the background, just on repeat. They're super good. But anyways, he has these discs and they're pretty important to him. And at this time, Tommy is also the only one on the server with a netherite chest plate, which if you don't play Minecraft or you aren't familiar with the new updates, that's basically the best ore in the game and it's super hard to get. So Dream figures out that Tommy has this netherite chest plate and obviously he wants it because it's super good. So he goes in through a bunch of kind of shenanigans and ends up bartering Tommy's netherite chest plate for some of his discs. So I believe he took Cat and Tommy still had Mellow High, but either way, Tommy wants both of them. So around this time is when Tubbo joins the server, and Tubbo is Tommy's best friend, both in the lore and in real life, but we'll get to that later, like I said. And Tommy immediately enlists Tubbo and is like, Tubbo, help me get my discs back. So they go and they want to get Tommy's discs back. So they have this whole fight with Dream and it's a big thing. They're building up and there's drama and intrigue and they're killing Dream and then they get the discs back and there's a whole race to get an ender chest. And there's a lot of combat logging and the ender chest is really important because Tommy can put the disc in there and Dream can't access it. So there's a whole thing about racing to get to the nether and get all of the stuff needed for an ender chest, and then they craft one. Tommy puts it down, puts the disc in, and then gets killed within a second. It's crazy, it's dramatic, it's wild. So all of that happens, but Tommy has the discs back in his possession now, which is pretty great for him. So all of that happens, but Tommy has the discs back in his possession now, which is pretty great for him. So this is the beginning of the disc conflict, which is going to be a through line throughout the entire Dream SMP plot. It happens a lot, and it's kind of the main driving force, except for this bad boy, but we'll get to that later. So in between this and kind of the beginning of the lore, the actual season 1, there's some other conflicts, such as the pet war, where this guy Sapnap goes around killing a bunch of people's pets for no reason, just to have fun, I suppose. And then there's the socializing club conflict, which is between Tubbo, Fundy, I think Tommy's there, maybe Purpled, who isn't up here, but he's in the lore, I swear. And that's just kind of, it kind of sows some seeds for what's to come, but it's not hugely important. Now, the actual lore of Season 1 starts when this guy, Wilbur Soot, joins the server. Now, Wilbur Soot, you probably know him. He's a musician, he's a Minecraft YouTuber, and at this point, he was just kind of friend of Tommy Innit, showing up to have a brief cameo. And then one day, there's this infamous Discord screenshot that exists where it's Wilbur DMing Tommy and he says, Tommy, go live, we are going to sell drugs. And this is the plot of Season 1 of Dream SMP, is that Wilbur decided to sell drugs, Minecraft ones, of course, and he enlisted Tommy to help him out. So Wilbur gets on the server and he's like, Tommy, listen. We're going to sell drugs to people. We are going to make Minecraft potions, we're going to sell them to people, and we need a monopoly, all right? This is going to be a business. So what they need to do to have a monopoly is they need to destroy all of the brewing stands on the server so nobody else can make potions. So they go around to everyone and they're like, oh, you have to give us your brewing stands because they're actually super dangerous. They go to Tubbo and they're like, give us your brewing stands, and Tubbo complies because Tommy's his friend. And then they go to Sapnap and they're like, Sapnap, we need your brewing stands. Trust us, it's important. They go to Puns and they say the same thing. Basically, they try to get everyone's brewing stands. They succeed a little bit. And then Wilbur builds a van in the center of a clearing and says, this is our drug dealing van. This is our Kamar van. That's what he calls it. And it is obviously a misspelling of camper van or something to that effect, but it's important now, so it's the camper van. So Tommy and Wilbur get their drug dealing business set up in the back of this van, and things are going pretty well until people start to get a little suspicious. So Sapnap shows up and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing? Why'd you steal everyone's brewing stands? And they're like, no reason. We were just having fun. Don't go in the back of the van. And then Sapnap goes in the back of the van and sees that they're actively starting like a Breaking Bad like kind of situation. And so he says, all right, this is no good. I'm telling Dream on you guys. So Dream is the owner of the server, so he's the owner of the wider Dream SMP, and so obviously this is going to be a problem. So around this time is when Tubbo gets involved. Tommy's like, Tubbo, come here. Let's sell drugs with me. All right, Wilbur says you can come on in. So Tubbo comes in, and all three of them are getting together. They're going to sell drugs together, but then Dream shows up, and he's like, hey, you can't sell drugs on our land. This is illegal. And Wilbur says, oh, really? We can't sell drugs on your land? That's crazy, because it isn't your land, it's our land. He decides this is a new independent nation. This is L'Manberg, all right? So this is big. So Tommy comes up with the name for L'Manberg because he's like, well, we're men, so let's call it Mantopia. And can you imagine if it was called Mantopia? That's crazy. But then they changed it to Manberg to sound more European because they're all European. And then to make it even more European, they add the L. So it's L'Manberg. And L'Manberg is centrally important to the Dream SMP. So important, I can't emphasize enough. But basically, they start L'Manberg and they say, well, it's our country, so we can sell as many drugs here as we want because Wilbur is in charge and he makes the rules and he says that we're allowed to sell drugs. So obviously, Dream takes offense to this because, hey, this is his land, and you can't do that here. So obviously, there's going to be conflict. Around this time is when Fundy joins L'Manberg, and in lore, Fundy is described as being the first person born on L'Manbergian soil, and this is where I have to explain that Fundy is Wilbur's son, and his mother is this fish, Sally the salmon. Don't ask me how it works. Nobody knows, okay? Wilbur and this salmon produced Fundy, and whatever. Fundy's Wilbur's son. That's all you need to know, basically. So around this time, there's a lot of conflict with L'Manberg, and it's not looking good for their independence, but then they sign a document called the Declaration of Independence. It was spelled that way. And they all get together and they say, this is going to be our sovereign nation. This is L'Manberg. We fight for the people, our freedom. There's a lot of Hamilton references in there. And by this time, they've also added Eret, who is another British person. And Eret is there, and they all get together and they sign the books with their names. So Wilbur, Eret, Tubbo, and Tommy all have their names signed in the Declaration of Independence. And by declaring this, they're basically saying, all right, we're a sovereign nation, and we are not part of your borders, Dream SMP. So they decide they're going to build walls around their country. So they start building these black and yellow walls, which is where this black and yellow part of the flag comes from. It's to represent the walls. And then I believe the red is for the revolution, the white is for peace, maybe, and then the blue is for innovation? I'm not sure, something like that. And the crosses are ripped from the Amsterdam flag because Fundy, the real guy, is from Amsterdam. So that's just some L'Manberg flag lore for you. But anyways, they start building these walls, and obviously Dream takes offense to it because, hey, you can't do that here. So they decide to declare war on L'Manberg. So again, this is where it's really starting to be lore. So now I'm completely talking about the characters when I'm talking about them. So Dream goes to, I think it's Tubbo's house. He goes to Tubbo's house, and Dream, together with, I think, Sapnap, they get together and they burn down Tubbo's house, and Dream is like, hey, this is a warning to you guys, you better surrender or else, all right? Or else this is what's gonna happen to your nation. So everyone on L'Manberg is like, he thinks that he can scare us? No, Wilbur's our leader, and Wilbur will guide us to safety. So Wilbur's a very charismatic guy, and he really does believe in the vision of L'Manberg, and also Tommy kind of, you'll see a lot throughout the story, Tommy really looks up to him, and so he's willing to follow him into this war, and Tubbo's there for the ride, and Fundy's Wilbur's son, so of course he's gonna go along. So all of them decide, all right, we're not gonna take this lying down. All right, L'Manberg is our country. We're gonna fight for it. So they all get together and they're like, you know what, Dream? We don't care that you're threatening us because L'Manberg is a sovereign country, and if we need to fight to the death to have our sovereign country, so be it, all right? So be it. So now they're going to fight to the death to have their country. So the L'Manberg Independence War takes place in late August, I believe, of 2020, maybe early September. And we have the 5th Battalion of L'Manberg, which is Wilbur, Tubbo, Tommy, Fundy, and Errett. And they all get together and they all fight Dream, basically. They have all of their like gear, which is paltry in comparison to what Dream and his lackeys have. But they're doing their best. They're fighting back. They hole up in Tommy's house, which is an embassy for L'Manberg, and they are basically shooting back at Dream, and they are really trying their best. It's kind of admirable, but it's just not working out. So essentially the 5th Battalion gathers in L'Manberg, and they're standing up to Dream, Sapnap, and I think George is there, although I don't know what George does, but he's there. And they're standing at the entrance of L'Manberg, and Wilbur is saying, he says his famous quote, where he says, "We will have liberty or we will have death. We would rather die than give in to you and join your SMP." And then Dream's like, "Okay, suit yourself," and lights a single block of TNT on fire. And Wilbur's like, "Oh, he's got a single block of TNT, what's that gonna do?" And then it blows up all of the TNT that they planted under L'Manberg, and it's like, oh my god, everyone's freaking out. So everyone has to run away from L'Manberg, and they go have like a battle on the battlefield. It's big. So eventually, all hope kind of seems lost for L'Manberg. They've done a lot of fighting, their country is basically destroyed, and Errett, this guy right here, says, "Hey guys, don't worry, because I've got a secret weapon." And Errett leads them through this tunnel under L'Manberg, and it's a very cramped, small space, and Errett leads them into this dark black stone room that has 5 chests in it. Each one has one of their names on it, and everyone's like, "Well, Errett, what is this? Like, why are we here?" And Errett presses a button in the middle of the floor in this room, and Dream, Sapnap, George, they all coming out of the walls, and like little things opened up, and Errett says, "Down with the revolution, boys. It was never meant to be." And everyone, they all come out of the walls, and Fundy dies, Tubbo dies, Tommy dies, Wilbur dies. It's huge. So this is a good opportunity to introduce the concept of canon lives. So this was established kind of in post, and it was Wilbur's idea, but a canon life is basically when someone dies on the server and it has a special sort of significance or meaning, then one of their 3 canon lives is taken away. So that's what these hearts are up here. So everyone who is involved in that and gets killed has a canon life taken away because it's a really important event. And you might be wondering, what happens after all 3 of their canon lives go away? Well, they die for real. They get to respawn after like their 3rd or 2nd canon life is taken, but after their very last one is taken, they're done. So I've got these little hearts up here. Funny loses 1. Tubbo loses 1. Tommy loses 1, and Wilbur loses 1. So they all lose 1 canon life. So this is a huge betrayal by Errett. They all thought that Errett was on their side, and the whole time they were not. Errett was not on their side. They're a traitor. So Wilbur gathers everyone together and said, "Listen, we have a traitor in our midst. I know it's looking bleak, and there's probably nothing we can do." But then Dream and Sapnap and George, they're coming after them again, and so they have to flee. And Tommy leads them into these tunnels that he's dug between his house/embassy and L'Manberg, and he leads them into this small little obsidian room, and it's Fundy, Wilbur, Tubbo, and Tommy, and they're all sitting in there, and they're all like, "All right, what do we do now?" And Fundy's like, "All right, guys, what's the like last minute like gambit that we do? Does anyone have any ideas?" And nobody has any ideas. So Tommy pulls out his discs and is basically like, "All right, guys, the revolution is about to end. We're about to be done for. So let's just listen to my disc, okay? And let's celebrate our times." But then Tommy has an idea. All right, Tommy has an idea, because Tommy so believed in the idea of L'Manberg, and he so believed in Wilbur's vision that he becomes willing to give up his disc for L'Manberg. And he decides that this is what he has to do. All right, Wilbur, I believe, has pitched the idea to him beforehand, and he was kind of like, "Oh, I'm not so sure about that," but now he knows that this is what he has to do. So Tommy's not so sure about this. He really doesn't want to, and so before he kind of gives up his disc, he says, "Well, what if Dream and I have a duel? What if there's a duel between me and him for L'Manberg's independence?" And so they basically wave the white flag and they say, "Okay, Dream, listen, we have a proposal. You and Tommy gather together. You each have a bow or a gun or whatever you want to believe it is, and you get together, you know, you'll take 10 paces and then you'll turn around and fire it at each other. And whoever wins gets to have what they want. So if Dream wins, then L'Manberg will not be independent and Tommy gives up one of his discs. And if Tommy wins, then Dream leaves him alone and gives L'Manberg full independence. So the duel's underway. It's going to happen. So Wilbur gets together with Tommy and Tommy goes, do I shoot him, Will, or do I aim for the skies? And Wilbur says, Tommy, I want you to do whatever your heart tells you to. Oh my God. Crazy line. Actually crazy. But they get together and Dream and Tommy start with their backs to each other and then they each take 10 paces. Wilbur is counting up to 10. That's important for later on, but they each take 10 paces. And then at 10, Wilbur says 10 paces fire and they both turn around and Tommy shoots twice, 3 times at Dream. Dream is shooting at him and they're both on half a heart because they had a poison potion drop on them, but Tommy gets shot first. And because this is significant, Tommy loses a canon life. So Tommy, in the span of 1 day, Tommy is down to his last canon life. Of course, we don't know that yet, but it is important for now. So afterwards, they meet up, and Dream says, okay, I beat you. Your country isn't independent. Now, Tommy, hand over your disc. Hand it over now. And Tommy is not so sure about this because it's his disc, and he doesn't want to give away his disc. It's his. But he also really does want L'Manberg to be independent because he really believes in Wilbur's vision, and he really believes in L'Manberg as a concept because L'Manberg is about getting together with your friends and deciding to do something new, which to him is super important. And so he decides that he would rather have this and give up both of his discs. So Tommy hands over both of his discs to Dream and says, please give L'Manberg its independence. And Dream agrees. So L'Manberg is now an independent nation within the borders of the Dream SMP, and Dream has both of Tommy's discs. So I said that about L'Manberg and its importance to Tommy because the discs are actually important to Tommy for a very similar reason, because a lot of the mystery and intrigue surrounding the discs surrounds the fact that they are very important to Tommy because they're important to him and Tubbo, because he listened to those discs a lot with Tubbo and they were important to the foundation of their friendship within the lore. So the discs really to Tommy are about Tubbo and about friendship, and they're just kind of there for him to be a reminder of those friends that he has, but he's willing to give that up for L'Manberg, and that's pretty nice of him. All right, so after L'Manberg receives its independence, we get a new character on the server. We get Jack Manifold. Jack Manifold is a really funny guy. He has lore. I promise we'll get to it. But Jack Manifold joins, and they instantly recruit him to L'Manberg. And then around this time, they also end up recruiting, where is she? They end up recruiting Nikki Niachu to L'Manberg. So now they've got 6 members, minus Eric the traitor, and now they have a national anthem, by the way. Wilbur comes up with this national anthem to the tune of Hallelujah, and it's basically just meant to be for L'Manberg, and there's a line in there directly calling out, fuck Eric because he's a fucking traitor, and we hate that guy. But L'Manberg's independent now, so, there's some cause for celebration, there's some cause for new recruitment, but celebration for Wilbur Soot means something a little bit different than it might mean for you and I, because Wilbur pulls Tommy aside and he's like, listen, Tommy, we're an independent nation now, but what does any of that mean if we're not a free nation? So I believe we have to have an election. Oh my God. So now they're gonna have an election. So Wilbur is running basically unopposed for the first few days of the election, and he is running with Tommy as his vice president, and their campaign name is POG 2020, which stands for Politicians of Gaming. I voted for them. Even though I didn't know what the Dream SMP was then, I saw Wilbur post a poll, and I was like, might as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So they're basically unopposed for the first few days, and Wilbur's like, fine with this, because at least it's an election, and he likes that he's going to win. But then, something changes, all right? Because this guy, Quackity, joins the server. Quackity, you might know, he did all of those raids on the children's games. Really fun, awesome channel. But he joins the server and he's there to be a little silly for a little bit, but then he decides, hey, let's get serious. All right, let's get serious. And he forms a party with George as his vice president, and they call it Swag 2020, which stands for So We Are Gamers 2020. So they are the opposing party, and Wilbur's getting a little worried. He's like, oh man, now there's somebody actually opposing me in the election. That's not good. But for now, it's kind of smooth sailing. He's pretty confident in their abilities. But then Fundy, who I forgot to mention earlier, but Fundy during the Lemberg Independence War had a pastel colored uniform and generally is treated a little bit childishly by Wilbur. Wilbur calls him like his little champion and like doesn't like when he goes out to fight. So Fundy, feeling a little bit suffocated by his father, decides that he's going to run against him. So Fundy gets together with Nikki and they form Coconut 2020, another opposing political party, and they decide that they're going to run and hopefully beat Wilbur. And it's just kind of Fundy's way of rebelling, because I'm not going to get into age discourse, but it's very like teenage rebellion. Nobody knows how old the characters in Dream SMP are, and there was a lot of fighting about it. But anyways, so the stage is set for the election, but then in the 11th hour, you will never, ever, 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 ever guess who joins. Actually, you might, because you've probably heard the quote on TikTok, but Jay Schlatt joins the server and says, well, you guys got an election going on here? I know a little bit something about being a politician and being a big like businessman and stuff. So he forms his own political party with no running mate called Schlatt 2020. And so now there are 4 political parties running. There's Pog 2020, Swag 2020, Coconut 2020, and Schlatt 2020. And Wilbur sends out a poll on his Twitter account and says, all right, everyone vote for who you want. I voted for Pog 2020 because Wilbur told me to. And so I voted, everyone else voted, thousands of people voted, and the election results come in. Everyone is gathered together, and a really cool thing out of the lore for a moment is that Wilbur did not tell anyone about what the results of the election were beforehand, so he knew that their reactions would be genuine, which is pretty cool. But anyways, it's time for the election results to be read. So everyone gets up on stage and Wilbur is announcing the election results. So he says, Pog 2020, Wilbur and Tommy received 49% of the vote. Congratulations, politicians of gaming 2020. Coconut 2020, Fundy and Nikki received, I believe, 50,000 votes. And then it was discovered that Fundy had used bots to put in more votes for their party. So Coconut 2020 gets disqualified from the race. Swag 2020, the interesting thing about Swag 2020 is that they received a good portion of the votes, but Quackity was the only member present. So where is George? Where's the Vice President George? George is asleep. So George sleeps through the election, and it's just Quackity. Quackity's the only one there. So that's so sad for Swag 2020, but they're not going to win because Pog 2020 has 49% of the vote. And then Schlatt 2020 gets the rest of the vote. So Pog 2020, very excited. Tommy is very excited, but Wilbur's a little bit somber. Why is Wilbur a little bit somber? Well, this is because Quackity, in a last-minute decision, has decided that, you know what? His running mate, George, didn't show up, and the election terms say that there's no rule preventing him from pooling his votes with Schlatt 2020 and putting together Swag and Schlatt 2020 and forming one political party to take 51% of the vote and push out Pog 2020, who only have 49%. So Schlatt is now the president with Quackity as his vice president of Lemberg. Can you believe that? Can you believe that happened? That was crazy. So Wilbur and Tommy kind of dejectedly go out in the crowd, and Schlatt takes a stand at the podium while Quackity cheers him on. He's like, yes, sir, and it's like, shut up, Quackity. But anyways, Schlatt stands at the podium, and he says probably his best line in all of Dream SMP history. He says, my first decree as president of this great nation, as emperor of this country, is to revoke the citizenship of Wilbur Soot and Tommy Innit. And so their citizenship is revoked. They are hereby exiled from Lemberg. And Wilbur's like, well, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Let's go, Tommy, run, run, run. So they end up running. They flee Lemberg. There's all of these people chasing them because they're not Lemberg citizens anymore. So they're basically free game. On the way out, Wilbur falls in a lake and gets shot and loses his second canon life. So Wilbur and Tommy flee to the woods, and there's nowhere that they're going to be safe because everyone is after them now. And Wilbur, who is actively losing it about the fact that he just lost the election that he planned so that he could win, decides, you know, we've been exiled, and now our only chance is to start over again and start not a new country, but a new settlement. Just you and me, Tommy, while we figure out what to do. So Wilbur finds a ravine in the ground and decides we are going to call this Pogtopia after Pog 2020. And Pogtopia is basically going to be their exile home while they figure out what to do, because Wilbur personally has just lost basically everything that he loved. Everyone that he loved has turned on him, and his country that he started is no longer his. So obviously he's not taking this super well. And everyone back in L'Manberg is shocked to find out that Schlatt is changing the name to Manberg to be American, not European, because Schlatt is American. Eventually, Tubbo regroups with Tommy and basically says, hey, it's pretty messed up that you guys got exiled, but I don't know what to do. What do I do? Because Schlatt has actually inducted me into his cabinet with Quackly as vice president and Fundy as he does something else, I don't know. But basically, Tubbo is now in Schlatt's cabinet, so Tommy decides with Wilbur that this is a fantastic idea, because now Tubbo can act as a spy for Pogtopia in the Manberg administration. So that is where we're at right now. Tubbo's a spy in Manberg, and everyone else is left to decide where they're going to kind of join their allegiances. The Manberg flag also changes to a completely black flag with a red semicircle and red cross, which is ominous and foreboding. And Fundy, I believe, is actually the one who changes the flag, which is pretty symbolic because he was the first one born on the Manberg soil, so that's pretty interesting. And also, Technoblade ends up joining the server. Pretty popular guy, even outside Dream SP, and he shows up and he decides, you know, Wilbur called me in to help him out because he's in pretty bad straits right now. So Technoblade is going to join up with Pogtopia, and he starts a farm, a potato farm, go figure, in Pogtopia, and basically promises his allegiance and is going to help them gear up, because Wilbur is currently planning to have a second revolution against Manberg, and his goal is basically to depose Schlatt as leader and take back Manberg for themselves. However, over time, this starts to change a little bit. So Wilbur is not in a good headspace at all. We see this mainly through his interactions with Tommy, who previously was and is his right-hand man, and there is a very impactful scene where he's talking with Tommy and he tells Tommy that he was never going to be and will never be president of L'Manberg because Tommy just isn't built for it. Wilbur doesn't trust him, and Wilbur knows that Tommy is afraid to do the right thing and do what Wilbur thinks is right. And Tommy basically says, hey man, you're crazy and you are taking this way too far. And Wilbur says, watch this, I'm gonna take it farther. And Wilbur decides it is not enough to simply take back Manberg from Schlatt, okay? That's just not enough for him. Instead, he decides that Manberg has to be destroyed because L'Manberg, the ideal of L'Manberg that he founded it for, no longer exists, and Manberg is the only thing left, so Wilbur has to destroy it. So Wilbur increasingly looks more into explosives. I believe he has a deal with Dream where Dream gives him a bunch of stacks of TNT, and Wilbur's like, I'm planting it all underneath Manberg, and we're gonna blow the place to kingdom come. And Tommy is like, hey, that's a bad idea. We've got friends there still. You know that, right? We still have friends there. And Wilbur's like, I kind of, but Manberg, so he basically is kind of losing it a little bit, which is not his fault necessarily, because I understand where he's coming from. If I had lost my country and half of my friends, I would be acting like that too. But it's going to have some pretty detrimental effects to the people around him. So the big event that happens in the Pogtopia era a few weeks after Tommy and Wilbur get exiled is the Red Festival. So Tubbo starts putting up decorations because Schlatt wants to have an inaugural festival for Manberg, and everyone is invited except Wilbur and Tommy because fuck them. And so there's going to be a Manberg festival where they're basically just going to celebrate the country's founding and the new president, and everyone is invited But Tommy and Wilbur end up finding out about it, and Wilbur decides we need to crash this festival. We need to, if not crash it, we need to do something about it. And I'm gonna press the button, and I'm gonna blow the whole thing up. By the way, Wilbur has a secret room underneath Schlatt's like podium / throne thing, where he has a single button and then a bunch of signs that have written the L'Manberg anthem, which it looks so wild, like when you look at pictures of it, because like that is efficient design for one thing, and it's got this very ominous little button in the center, and if Wilbur presses that button, the implication is that all the TNT that he's planted under Manberg is going to blow the entire place up. So Wilbur's like, Tommy, let's crash this party, let's crash this festival, and then halfway through, you know, Tubbo will get out of the way, and I will go press the button, and it's gonna blow the entire place up. And Tommy obviously is not so sure, because that's dangerous, and he doesn't want to see all of these people get hurt. So he's like, you know, Wilbur, maybe hold off on the button thing. You know, we can still crash the festival if you want, but just maybe don't touch the button for now. So Wilbur reluctantly agrees, and on the day of the festival, these two gather, and they have a vantage point on some building in Manberg, and they basically just watch the festival go off without a hitch. There's partying, there's decorations, there's slap fights in the boxing ring. It's all very fun, and they just kind of watch everyone having fun in the country that they're no longer in charge of, and Wilbur is obviously very upset by all of this. So during the festival, there's a moment where Schlatt comes up on the podium, and he's going to give his grand speech to the gathered Manberg citizens and basically say, you know, like, welcome to our country, and here's to 1 billion more years of me as president, basically. So he gets up, gives his speech. Tubbo and Quackity are sitting on either side of him, and about halfway through the speech, he's like, well, let's all say thank you to Tubbo for putting this all together, for putting together the decorations. He worked so hard on this festival. Thank you, Tubbo. And you know what, Tubbo, why don't you come up here? So Tubbo goes up to the podium and is standing where Schlatt would be standing, and Schlatt's like, you know what, Tubbo, how about you give a speech? And Tubbo says, you know, thank you guys for coming to the festival, and there's a key word, there's a key phrase that Tubbo's supposed to say to basically signal Wilbur to go for the button, and that phrase is let the festival begin. So Tubbo says that during the speech, and the second it's out of his mouth, Schlatt starts like low chuckling, and it's like very intimidating, and Schlatt's like, I know what you've been up to, Tubbo. I've seen it. You are helping the two traitors to our nation, Wilbur and Tommy. I know that you're a double agent. I know that that's why you've been sneaking around and in the tunnels underneath our nation. So what's up with that? And so he's like, Quackity, could you do the honors, please? And Quackity and Schlatt together, they start putting him in a box around the podium. And Tubbo's like, hey, Schlatt, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, trying to maintain his composure. And Schlatt says, listen, Tubbo, the one thing about Manberg is that, like, we don't tolerate traitors, and you're a traitor, and it's just, you know, you've just betrayed this country, and traitors have to suffer. And Tommy and Wilbur are losing their minds. Wilbur is like sending messages to Tubbo in chat being like, tell us if he needs to come over there, tell us if he's like about to hurt you, we are gonna do something about this. Tommy is losing his mind because that's his best friend up there, and he can see where this is going. He's seen where this goes before, and so he is losing it. He's like about to rush in there, but Wilbur's like, stay back, stay back. He's not gonna hurt Tubbo, he's not gonna do it. And then, oh my God, and then Schlatt is like, Technoblade, could you please come up here? Because Technoblade's in the crowd for some reason, so he calls Technoblade up, and he's like, Techno, are you a fan of traitors? I need you to kill this one for me. I need you to kill Tubbo. I need you to take him out. And Techno's like out to dinner or like what? And Schlatt's like, no, Techno, I need you to kill him with that crossbow that you're holding. And Technoblade is like, what? I kind of don't want to do that. And Schlatt is like, well, just do it because like you like anarchy. Why don't you kill him? Can you please kill him for me? Can you please kill him? And everyone is losing their minds. And Schlatt just keeps telling him like, kill Tubbo, please kill Tubbo. And Tubbo's like, guys. And then finally Schlatt says, kill Tubbo like 1 billion times. And Technoblade's like, fine. And he loads up his crossbow, shoots Tubbo in the face, and then ends up turning on Schlatt, takes out Schlatt as well. So Tubbo loses a cannon life, and and Schlatt also loses a cannon life. So they are both down 1. And then basically the Red Festival turns into the Red Festival for a reason, because it is a massacre. Technoblade goes around killing everybody. Tommy is losing his mind. He's running down there like fully like armored and sword out, ready to hit Technoblade, ready to kill anyone he can. Wilbur, meanwhile, takes the opportunity to the chaos to run around to where he has the button room underneath Schlatt's podium. He runs around and run, and he's covered it up with blocks. And he finds that he cannot find the entrance to the button room. He's completely lost. He doesn't know where he put it, and it was very embarrassing to see live, but he can't find it, and so he doesn't know where to go and blow the entire place to Kingdom Come, basically. So the Red Festival essentially ends with everyone getting slaughtered. Again, they don't all lose canon lives because canon lives have to mean something, but basically everyone gets killed a billion times. And everyone decides to regroup at Pogtopia. So Techno, Wilbur, Tubbo, and Tommy regroup, show back up at Pogtopia, and Tommy and Tubbo rejoice, and, well, not really.
Hi folks, editing Carl here. So I accidentally lost some of the footage during this part. It's only a little bit, but just basically the basic gist of what happens next is that Tommy and Techno end up having a fight in the pit in Pogtopia, and it's kind of critical, but nobody really dies. It's just kind of a violent moment between the two of them, and then kind of immediately following the festival, Quackity and Schlatt have a marital dispute, and Quackity ends up shooting Schlatt, and Schlatt loses his second canon life, and Quackity defects to Pogtopia. So that's essentially what you missed. Sorry about the missing footage. Also, the audio here gets a little messed up. I've done my best to clean it up, but if you can hear the buzzing noise in the background, I'm sorry about that. Blame my school's terrible rented out camera.
Alright, so Quackity is recruited to Pogtopia, and almost immediately, like I think the next day, Wilbur streams, and there's this part where he goes into the button room. He's found it, apparently, and he goes in there, and Tommy and Quackity follow him, and Wilbur's standing there the whole time like, I'm gonna press a button, and Tommy and Quackity has to keep being like, stop, like, don't do that, and Quackity has, like, just joined their cause, and so it's, like, day one, and he's preventing Wilbur from destroying this entire country, and it's actually, like, kind of messed up, because they have to, like, physically block him away from the button, and he's like, I'm gonna press it, I'm gonna blow this whole thing and you guys up, and they're like, don't do this, man. But anyways, so Fundy kind of almost immediately following Quackity's defection decides to defect as well. He shows up when Wilbur, Tubbo, Tommy, a bunch of people are there, and Wilbur is like, oh, look, my traitor son has come back to see me, and Fundy's like, just hear me out, man, and hands them this book that has all of his logs that he's written down about what life has been like under Schlatt's rule, and basically the point of this book is that Schlatt has been drinking himself to death. He only subsists off of protein shakes. He pumps iron every day. His heart and his liver are probably both extremely unhealthy and close to giving out. And Wilbur's like, you know what, Funny, this is kind of useful information, all right? I've decided. You can join our cause, all right? Thank you. But he's not that happy about it, all right? Fundy's, he's still considering Fundy like a traitor to the bloodline, but he's okay with him sticking around. So, by this point, Nikki is fundamentally left, like, alone in L'Manberg, which kind of sucks for her, and she's really toughing it out, though. You know what? Shout out to Nikki, and she's doing her best, but I just wanted to mention her because she's still hanging out there. But basically everyone else has defected to Pogtopia, and they're kind of all gathering together under the Pogtopia banner and are coming together to say, all right, let's launch this offensive on Manberg because Schlatt is unfit to rule and he's generally pretty terrible. I haven't mentioned him yet, but Bad Boy Halo is there, and he shows up to say, like, hi guys, and I think maybe he gives them supplies or something, I don't know. But their whole thing, so Bad Boy Halo, Skeppy, Ant Frost, and maybe some other folks, they're all part of the Badlands, and their thing is that they are going to fight for whichever side is losing in this war just to cause as much chaos as possible because it's funny. And you know what? That's kind of awesome of them, so good for them. But then what happens after that is Dream shows up, and Dream is like, you guys are gonna take on Manberg? That's funny. That's really funny. Anyways, there's a traitor in your midst. What? Dude. This reveal was actually crazy, all right? There was speculation for weeks about who the traitor was. It was wild. and Dream's like, there's a traitor in your midst, see ya. So Dream disappears. Then, while everyone is away on that Saturday playing Minecraft Championships, which apparently is canon to the Dream SMP, everyone like puts down their weapons for a day and goes to play like Hunger Games and stuff. While everyone is at MCC, Technoblade grinds out a ton of different materials and has a vault full of netherite tools, weapons, armor, etc. And so basically, they are prepared to kick Manberg's ass and take it back for Manberg. So this is going to be pretty big. So finally, it is time for the Manberg Independence War. So everyone in Pogtopia gathers their stuff together, and there's this awesome moment at the beginning of Wilbur's VOD where he's like, guys, listen, I promise I'm not going to blow up Manberg, okay? Because I really want you guys, the audience, to be able to access the world map afterwards and be able to like see it for yourself. And it would like spoil the fun if Manberg was blown up. And then he pauses, and he does to the camera, he just does a little wink, and then he collapses his thing and gets into Minecraft, and it's like, oh, dude, you need to stop now. This guy is...
Do you think they heard?
Do you think they know about Dream SMP? So after Wilbur does that, everyone gets together, and Technoblade is like, check out this vault that I have, guys. Everyone loses their minds. All of the best like gear in the entire game is there. Everyone gets like suited up. It is actually like time, and they are about to obliterate Manberg, hopefully, because they have all this stuff. And Wilbur has this thing against armor. So originally when Manberg was founded, the big thing was you can't come within Manberg's borders unless you're not wearing armor. And like they didn't wear armor when they were fighting for their independence and stuff like that, because Wilbur believes in settling things with your words and not with violence. So he does not put any armor on, but it's also because at this point he's super suicidal. So they all get together and they're marching out to Manberg. And so this Independence War happened on November 16th, 2020, which was 3 years ago today. I'm filming this on November 16th. And so because of that, everyone is posting all of these pictures from November 16th. And there's this picture someone posted on my Twitter timeline where someone was saying, like, there's a point in Wilbur's VOD where he hangs back watching everyone walk to Manberg, and he just looks on them for a moment and then takes a screenshot of all of them walking away, because like he's so detached from everything at this point that it's like the last thing they can have them, which is like wild and crazy. So also before the war, he does visit Nikki in Manberg, and he is holding some lapis lazuli, further known as blue in the future, and he hands some blue to Nikki, and the meaning of this is debated still to this day. Nobody really knows, but we'll get more into blue in season 2, but basically before he kind of dies, which he will in a few minutes, he gives some blue to Nikki, and it's kind of important. So the Manberg Independence War is fought. Everyone is, fighting Dream and all those guys who are helping out Manberg, like just to have fun or something, and they're shooting each other, they're attacking each other. It's all a big, big mess. Also, during this war, Wilbur, for seemingly no reason, attacks and kills Jack Manifold, and he loses one of his canon lives. It's literally for no reason. Wilbur just wants to be silly. So, that happens. Implied to be alcohol, and he's basically just tearing himself apart. And all of the Pogtopia forces gather together in the van, they surround him, and they say, all right, your time is up, Slat, like, any last words? And he goes, if I die, this country goes down with me, which is, like, crazy. And then Fundy confronts him, and Fundy says, I had a dream, you had a dream and I followed it, but you've destroyed it, man. This country isn't Manberg anymore, this is nothing, look at yourself. And Quackity also gets a few jabs in there to be like, we were married, but you called my ass Slat too many times. So Slat basically drinks himself to death, and everyone's surrounding him. Tommy's like ready to shoot him, and then Slat goes, does anyone smell burning toast? And then dies. Like, nobody shoots him, he just dies. He falls over and dies. He had a freaking heart attack and died. That is Slat's ending. So that is his final canon life, death by heart attack. And he's dead. He's dead. So, see ya, Slat. So with Slat dead, the leader of Manberg is gone, and essentially they've won Manberg back. So everyone gathers, and everyone's ready to hear what Wilbur has to say about this, because this whole thing was his idea. So he gets up on the podium, and he says, thank you guys for helping me win our country back. You know, L'Manberg is great, liberty, whatever, all that stuff that he loves to talk about. He probably quotes Hamilton like a billion times, and he says at the end that he does not want the president title, and instead, he's going to give it to Tommy. Oh my God, now do you guys remember all that stuff about how he told Tommy that he was never going to be president because he wasn't cut out for it and he wasn't like worthy of it? Wilbur tells Tommy he can finally be president, which is so wild. So Tommy goes up to the podium, but Tommy, he has other priorities, all right? He's 16, he's not about to be running a country. So he instead decides, you know, he says to everyone, like, I would love to accept this position, and I've really wanted this after working with Wilbur for so long, but I cannot accept. Instead, I have to go after what's the most important to me, and I have to retrieve my discs from Dream, because those are what's most important to me right now, because they represent his friendship with Tubbo. Remember that, really important. So Tommy then says, I would instead like to pass this presidency to Tubbo instead of me. So Tubbo, please come up and accept your presidency. So that's crazy. Meanwhile, while Tubbo is going up to the podium, Wilbur has kind of snuck off. What's he doing? So that's interesting. So Tubbo goes up on the podium and he says, wow, I'm very excited to accept this position. I never thought that I would get this far, stuff like that. He's just generally being very accepting. Tubbo is a little bit different from Tommy in that, you know, he is kind of a go-getter, but in the sense that he also likes to move past things immediately instead of dwelling on them. So the fact that he got shot and died, he tries not to let it faze him, and instead he's just like, I'm going to be president now, so let's focus on that instead. So Tubbo is now moving on to being president, and he's super prepared for this, and he's like, you know, everyone, let's just have a good time. Let's celebrate like we never got to for the festival, and everyone kind of disperses and decides to celebrate. But you can't celebrate just yet. You can't celebrate yet. Because Wilbur has disappeared from the after party of the Independence War, and where has he slunk off to? I bet you can never guess. That's right. Wilbur heads to the button room behind the podium. Oh my God. So everyone under Tubbo's orders is outside, like, getting together to rebuild rebuild L'Manberg. I was slipping into Schlatt there for a moment. Everyone gets together to rebuild L'Manberg after kind of the destruction that was caused during the war, and Nikki in particular, who before all of this and still is very close with Wilbur, she thinks that maybe they should tear down the podium because it has this big S on it for Schlatt, and she's like, well, that's bad memories. She breaks one block, sees all of this TNT behind it, and immediately replaces the block and turns around and like looks at everyone to see if they noticed, and nobody says a thing, and she just stares at them all like this and doesn't say a word. And so she knows, but nobody else knows. And meanwhile, Wilbur is in the button room losing his mind. He says, I've been here 6 or 7 times now. All of this speech is ingrained in my memory, by the way. He says, I've been here, and I've just been considering, and I've never actually pressed this button. And this scene is so crazy because he just, like, this is the moment where he should have everything that he's been working for. He's finally won his country back. He could have been president again, and he chose not to because the thing that he built this nation for doesn't exist anymore, in his own words. And so the only opportunity that he has left to end all of it, including himself, is now. He can press this button and have it all be done. And then, you'll never guess who shows up. Philza, Minecraft, creator of Minecraft, old man, has a wife, logs in, he joins Wilbur's Discord VC, and he goes, what are you doing? In this super intimidating voice. Everyone lost their minds. I cannot describe to you how much of a thing this was leading up to it, okay? I didn't know who Philza Minecraft was before this happened, but I knew that everyone was like, oh, what if Philza joins? Wouldn't that be crazy if that happened? And then you hear Philza's voice, and I was like, why are people freaking out? Because it's Philza Minecraft. And Philza says, what are you doing? And Wilbur's like, hi, Philza Minecraft. I'm not doing anything. Like, don't worry about it. And Philza's like, like, what's all of this I hear about, like, what's going on here? And Wilbur's like, don't worry. Like, I'm just, like, having fun. You know, we got the country back. Don't worry about it. And then Philza's like, really now? I'm hacking into the whitelist of the dream message. Which is really funny. But he says, I'm showing up. I'm coming to see you. And Wilbur's like, no, like, no need for that. Like, don't worry about it. Like, stay away. And then Filza logs in, and he's standing right behind Wilbur in the tunnel between him and the outside world. And Filza is standing there, and he's like, Wilbur, what is all of this? What are these signs with this writing on it? And Wilbur's like, this is where I like go to hang out. Like, don't worry about it. And Filza's like, what are these signs on the walls? And Wilbur's like, well, you know how I was writing you all those letters about like this country that I started, and it's called L'Manberg? Well, the thing about these signs is that like there was a special place called L'Manberg, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's not there anymore. And so something has to be done. And Filza's like, Wilbur, what are you on about? Like, what is going on here? And Wilbur's like, you know, Phil, like, listen, you just have to listen. Like, L'Manberg is my unfinished symphony, and like, it's over, it's done, like, I don't really know what to tell you. And Phil's like trying to talk him out of it, and then Wilbur is like, you know, Phil, there was a saying by a traitor. You know what that saying was, Phil? It was never meant to be. And then he pushes the button, and everything blows up. The entirety of L'Manberg blown to smithereens. There are edits of all of the different streamers' reactions, and everyone's mouth falls open like it is a huge, huge thing. Everyone is shocked, flabbergasted, perplexed. Wilbur takes some damage during the explosion, but doesn't die like he hoped. And so he is standing there in this gaping cave, which everyone below can see, including Tommy, everyone else, Quackity, and it's just Phil and Wilbur standing there, and everyone is like, what is Phil doing here? And Wilbur stands there, and he pulls a diamond sword out of his inventory, hands it to Phil's and goes, Phil, you need to kill me right now. And Phil is like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Wilbur's like, you gotta kill me. You have to kill me. Look, everyone out there wants you to do it, despite the fact that everyone is just looking at them like, and like nobody's like, kill him. It's just like Wilbur's thinking way too hard. I have my theories about this, but we'll get to that later. And Phil is like, I'm not going to kill you. And Wilbur's like, you have to kill me, you have to kill me. And Phil goes, you're my son. What? Oh my God, that reveal was so crazy, because the thing is about Dream SP is that not a lot of the characters have actual backstories, and so to find out that Wilbur is Phil's actual canonical son, that is crazy. So Wilbur tells his own father to kill him, and then eventually Philza caves, and often it's depicted with Philza putting a sword through his own son's stomach, which is crazy, and a lot of the times also people like to depict it as like a hug almost, which drives me wild. And it is also canon. This was something that was fanon and then got implemented later, which we'll talk about later, but it was canon that when Philza showed up, he had these big, beautiful, like, working wings, and he used them to shield Wilbur from the explosion when he pressed the button, and now they are ruined and he cannot fly anymore. And so, wonderful Sadist, who drew some of these images that I have up here, who is like the main Dream SMP animator, kind of drew this wonderful depiction of Phil putting the sword through Wilbur and like his broken wings kind of trying to shield him still. Like, this is his only son, and now he's just killed him. So Wilbur loses his last canon life. My hands are shaking. And Wilbur's dead. Wilbur is dead. And kind of from beyond, before Wilbur ends his stream, he's technically dead in the lore, but he's like running around doing whatever. He's like, Tubbo, you are president of a crater! And then he logs off. So, Wilbur is dead. Everyone on the ground who just watched this happen is shocked. Tommy especially devastated. Quackity losing it. Like, everyone is befuddled that this could happen. Fundy just watched his dad get killed by his grandpa. Like, this is wild. And you think, just when you think, maybe it can't get any wilder than this, Technoblade, you won't believe what happens. Technoblade, defining characteristic is that he does not like the government. He does not like any form of government. He's an anarchist, okay? And he basically says, hey, you just made Tubbo president. I have spent weeks getting all of this gear for you guys, preparing you for this. I've been helping you out, and you are going to come in and replace one tyrant with another. And Tubbo is like a 16-year-old boy who just got given the presidential role, but we're not going to talk about that. And Techno's like, I'm not going to stand for this, all right? This was not in the deal. So Techno pulls out a bunch of soul sand and wither skulls, and if you play Minecraft, you know that that summons the wither, which is like this huge boss that it takes 1 billion like health points to kill, and basically promises total devastation for Lemberg. But while he's doing this, everyone is like watching on and being like, Techno, stop! Like, it's not that serious, okay? It's just Lemberg. Like, it's already been destroyed. Look at all of this. You don't have to do that. And then Techno is like, guys, I don't like governments. And before he lets the withers loose, he does have this really cool speech where he says to Tommy, did you know, Tommy, that in mythology there's a hero named Theseus who was loved by his people but eventually was thrown out of his own country and never got to be a hero again? And they exiled him, they hated him, and he doesn't say this in the speech, but the story of Theseus then goes in some respects that he threw himself off of a cliff, which is crazy for the implications later on, but he basically says, you know, Tommy, you are just like Theseus, did you know that? Because you want to be a hero so bad, but you're not going to be, because that's not what you're made for, and you aren't a hero, because I'm about to destroy your entire country. And Tommy's like, I don't want to be a hero, I just want to, like, be happy and chill. And Techno's like, you want to be a hero, Tommy? Then die like one. And he summons all these withers and, like, destroys Lemberg. Utter devastation. Everyone has just watched their fearless leader Wilburson die, and now they have to kill all these things before it completely, utterly destroys what's left of their country. So everyone gets together and tries to slay these things. Technoblade runs off to do whatever, and eventually they finally kill all of these withers, and, like,